Hi, my name is Jeff, and I'm going to share with you what me and my wife decided to do when insulating our she shed shop building. We did a lot of research and we're happy with the results, and I'm going to share with you. We actually produced a video about 2.5 years ago, and I'm going to share with you some of the costs to heat that building as well as what we would do differently. And there are a few things I would definitely do different. So hang around for the end for that. Just a disclaimer, I am not an expert. It may not be the best way, it may not even be the right way, but it's the way that we decided to do it, and we're happy with it. Regarding insulation, I also plan to release what we did around our foundation, our slab, our cement slab, what was code for Minnesota and what we had to do. When we built this building, we weren't planning on insulating it, so we had to go back and pull all the dirt back, put in this insulation around the foundation, so watch for that. And also the way I capped off the access door to the attic, I plan to have a little video on that as well. It worked out really well. So another thing, when we were looking at our insulation, we didn't want to use a physical vapor barrier or a poly vapor barrier. We just don't. I'm not going to get into it, but we wanted to stay away from that at all costs. I'm going to quickly go over the tools needed for both the 4x8 sheets of foam and the Rockwool. It's pretty simple, actually. So this is very handy, and it's actually made for sheetrock, but you mark it and use the straight edge to score it. And we just used one of these box cutters, and we would score the insulation about halfway, a little bit more, and then it just snaps. So that worked out really well to cut it. For the Rockwool, any knife that will cut fresh bread will actually cut this really well. So this is, I think they actually called it an insulation knife at Menards. And I mean, if it cuts bread, it will cut this stuff really well. And again, you can use like a straight edge if you want to make it nice and straight here, but kind of something like this. And then just lightly cut this. And it's nothing to cut this stuff. It's actually fun to work with. You want to wear a mask, because this stuff, if you work with it a lot, you will get a little stuff in your lungs. So you definitely want to use an R95 mask. So yeah, I just cut that, and you can see it's cut really well. So two other tools I want to point out. I like these box cutters where you extend it. You can use to cut this spray foam to level it off. Or if you have one of these oscillating saws, they work great on cutting that excess spray foam off. I'm going to quickly go over roughly what we did. Take a look at that first video for more reference. But the two insulations that we use together is this Rockwool insulation. It's very good for moisture. It's very good for mold. And then we use different versions of this closed foam board. Now this is only 1 inch. We mostly used 1.5 inch and 2 inch on top. So for the walls, you can see here, we first put an 1.5 inch board against the steel. So here is the 1.5 inch. Now our value of 7.5 pink board, and we put that in the next to the steel, and so it's flush with the 2x8s, I believe, that are running across. We plan to put Rockwool 3.5 inch insulation in here. We put up our 2x4 walls, and then we put this Rockwool in this cavity. I just want to go over what we did for the center wall separating the studio from the shop. We treated it as an exterior wall, and so you can see it here finished. So what we decided to do was actually put the foam boards in the 2x6 walls because I didn't want to lose that 1.5 inch of space if we put it on against the 2x6s here. It would have been a lot easier to install, but my family helped and we got it done pretty quick. We kept a little gap there so we could use spray foam to make it tight. Another reasons why I wanted to do it this way is if I did it place the 1.5 inch of board over this wall, basically I would have to modify the outlets to come out 1.5 inches so they would work. And I didn't really want to do that, so I just did it this way. What we did is we actually taped the exterior of the wall, got all the taping done, and then went behind the wall and did the spray foam. That worked out really well. I would definitely recommend that. You can see it here. It looks really well done. And the inspector, yes, said that's fine for a vapor barrier. The one thing I want to point out is when you do this, cover your outlets, because a lot of heat is lost in your outlets if you don't put insulation behind them. So I used spray foam and just sprayed the back of the boxes so that cold air would not come through there. We did 2x4s in the ceiling there, and we just laid these on top. That worked out really well. You can, if you spread your body out, you can actually crawl on top of there and you won't fall through. You have to be very careful that you don't put your knee down or a lot of pressure in one point. We cut out where we needed to around the poles and so forth, and so it fit around the pole nice. We left a little gap in there. We spray foamed it to make it airtight as possible. So here is the view from on top. Obviously there's our access hole, and we need to get that last section, you can see there, but it is dark up here. Here's a quick video. Now this is the most challenging part about this insulation, putting it in here. We have a lot of plumbing in this particular situation. We have a vent there. We have a pipe going through there, and we really had to use the most spray foam we had to use. We had to kind of piece it in there and make sure it's spray foam. Now we're going to spray foam from the top and bottom. So we left a little gap and spray foamed everything. I did partially from the top, but I did everything from the bottom. So it looked like we did it all. And I don't know if I did. I don't think I did all the top. It was just too much. So I just did from the bottom. So in the attic, we have R10 4x8 sheets, 2-inch foam board. On top of that, we have an R15 of this Rockwool, and we overlaid it with an R30 of the Rockwool. So there you see the R15, R30. I don't know how far back you can see there, but the little ridge there, where you see that R15, that's that insulated pipe for heating. That's why it's up a little bit. We just put it on top. But placed all those in there. Looks pretty good right there. So that's one side. Got the other side. Here we're finishing up. This is the last section. A little bit more about installing this. I don't really have any good footage of that, but it's pretty easy to install. We overlapped them, crisscrossed them. I did a little search online. It's pretty common to stack these, and you shouldn't lose any insulation value. The one thing I do want to point out is you have to leave a gap here. You have to leave a gap so the air flows through here, and it's a bad angle, but there is an air gap there. And this video reminds me, I'm going to go back there and make sure that's a big enough air gap. I'm going to go back and make sure it's at least a foot, because there's a foot overhang, and so kind of keep that consistent so it doesn't bottleneck. So I was walking around the corner, then I found this thing. Dude, what are you doing? Look at those claws. So I'm going to go over a couple things that we learned, 2.5 years later, what we would do different. First one is install this first layer of insulation board over the horizontal purlins. Two main reasons. By keeping this foam board not touching the steel, keeping the air gap in there, it'll act as kind of an insulation. It won't transfer that cold air from the outside steel or hot outside right to the foam board and transfer that energy and heat or cold through that foam board. There'll be a little buffer in there. In addition to that, some of the places where I filled the cracks in between the two 4x8 sheets, there's that corrugated steel. It would have been nice to keep that flowing, to keep the airflow on the corrugated metal pieces. That would help with the airflow as well, but there's places where I not only put this foam board against the steel, I plugged up that corrugated steel, really blocking the airflow. So now really hot days, there's going to be, it's going to hit that steel and it's going to get really hot in there, and that's going to heat this foam board up, and I'm going to lose a lot of the value there. So those are the two major reasons why I'd put that 4x8 sheets not touching the steel. You do lose 1.5 inches of your interior wall. For us, most of the places want to hurt us because these are 4x6 inch poles, and we would have had enough room to do that. So these foam boards would be pretty much level with this diagonal board. Knowing that there's actually a time where it was 50-degree difference, it was like below zero outside, it was about 50 degrees inside, and I just was curious how the insulation was working. I pulled back this Rockwool insulation, and the purling, the horizontal purlings, there's actually frost on the wood. It's going to give you an update. It's 50 degrees inside, 9 degrees outside. We're actually going to pull back this Rockwool insulation. And I'm not happy to see this. You can see clearly there's frost, and it's, you can see it really bad right by this 2x6. But you can even see it down here, where there's clearly, you know, 2x6. I do feel a little draft in here. So I'm gonna keep an eye on this to see how it turns out. It was below zero last night, so pull this one back. That one looks really good. This is the other wall. I just want to point out that it warmed up a little bit, maybe 15 degrees the next couple days, and I checked, I think 2 days later, maybe it was like 3 days later, no moisture at all, no evidence of moisture, so it dried out really well. And that's another thing why I like this Rockwool, is if it gets wet, it just sheds the water. It doesn't really affect the structure of the Rockwool, so it dries out, and and I think that helps with mold, obviously, if it dries out really fast. It's one of the reasons why I really like this Rockwool over fiberglass. I definitely think it's worth the additional cost. So what I did in the unfinished part of the shop, on the one side at least, is I covered the 2x6 purlings with a sheet of 1-inch foam, and then I went around and filled the gap with the spray foam. And we did have one cold day after I did that, and I was very excited to see that it pretty much fixed the frost. Just checking my insulation. It's about 50 degrees inside, 8 degrees outside. And I want to see if I can see any difference in my fix. I'll rip this back. You don't see any frost, which is good. It's a little like a film on there or something, but it's not wet. And when I touch this one, it's a little colder than down here. But there we go. There's no moisture on this. Now, if it was 10 degrees colder outside, would there be? I don't know. So one thing nice about using this Rockwool, though, it will just dry out. I hate to do this, but I really want to see if those 2x6s are moist behind this. So I cut this out, see if this was moist. It is not. Surprisingly, it's not moist at all. It's like more moisture on this side. So I think what was happening was that coldness was coming in, it was hitting this, and then the moisture from here to here created just a slight dampness in this board. I think this fix is helping. I'm happy about that. Okay, it's all about the numbers. So we're looking at the numbers, and obviously there's a date here. We're comparing the shop studio to our modified two-story house. It was built in 2007, has blown-in insulation in the ceiling, typical fiberglass 2x6 walls with fiberglass insulation. There was a little spray foam on where the top of the walls meet, basically the top of the walls in the basement. They have a little section of spray foam in there, but and I think that's the only place they have spray foam in our modified two-story. 2,000 finished square feet. We do have an unfinished basement of about 900 square feet. Here's the cost for the shed. And then I know gas prices always change, so here is the gas used. And we're mostly going to look at the winter last year, the 2022-2023 winter. It was a very cold winter, a lot of snow. So this is kind of the worst case scenario. This compared to the 2024, 2023, 2024 winter was much more mild. So we can look at both of those years. So here is the cost. And I summed it up pretty nicely here. If we look at the 2023 winter, average temp of 24.8. Now that's from, I believe that's from November to the end of March winter. And then 2024 winter, same time period, 33.2 degrees, so much more mild. The cost to heat the house with natural gas, $647.92, compared to the shop studio of $438.39. And then if we look at the mild winter, $428 versus $288. So it breaks down to 32 cents per square foot for the winter versus the shop studio of 33 cents. And so that's really close. If you look at the more mild 2024 winter, it is the same. So there's a lot of variables with comparing these two. On the shop side, we have that 16-foot garage door, and like in the 2023 winter, we had a lot of snow, so we were opening up that door, I would say anywhere from 10 to 15 times that winter to clear the snow, where in 2024, I think there was only like 3 or 4 times we had to actually open up the door to clear the snow. And obviously we opened up the door for other things, but that we opened it up a lot more in this winter to clear the snow. So that's one variable. Now this house, modified two-story, does have a 16-foot garage door, but it is an unheated garage, so it doesn't affect the heating of the house as much when you open that garage door up. So one thing I want to point out, in the shop, we actually have a 16-foot garage door and a 7-foot garage door. So sometimes we open both of those up to get equipment in and out for the winter. So obviously when you open those up, that really cools down the shop site, and that heater's got to reheat that. And also the garage doors are not insulated as well as the walls. So I don't know what a typical insulated garage door is, but it's nowhere near the R21, R22 we have in the walls. So that's a big hit on our heating cost for our shop. And there's no way we can separate the cost for the shop versus the cost for the studio. And I don't really know how to do that. We do have a separate gas line going to the shop studio versus our house. So that's how we can get these numbers. So overall, I am pretty happy with where we're at. This just verifies that the shop studio is not killing us for heat. It's on par with our house, so I'm happy with that. And so hopefully these numbers, you can compare it with yours and see where you're at. And let me know in the comments if you see anything that is not good. Thanks for watching the video, and I do also plan to make more videos of finishing our shed, she shed, and shop. Different aspects of that. I actually did a lot of the electrical myself. We did a lot of projects ourselves finishing it, so watch the channel for that. Thank you for watching, and God bless you and all your projects.